If you're considering buying a student rental investment or you own a student rental investment in the city of Guelph, then this podcast is especially for you. It's packed with valuable information that will help you be a better landlord and avoid the pitfalls that student rentals are known for. I'm going to be talking with Farhan Mahmood, who is a student rental property owner and one of our mortgage partners. And we're going to be talking about the tips we have for student rental owners. I know that a lot of you are busy people, and this conversation will be a pretty long one. So if you're short on time, just look at the chapters below and select the one that is something you're maybe having trouble with or having a specific question for. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Farhan Mahmood. Farhan, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thank you for introduction. And as you mentioned, me and Andrew both have owned student rentals for a very, very long time in city of Guelph, as well as we have helped tons and tons of people get into student rentals. Especially if your kid is going to University of Guelph, this is something you want to do. It's a great return on investment, as well as it's a great way to get into the market if that's something you're looking for.
Absolutely. And Farhan, I don't know if you share the same sentiment as me, but student rentals are my favorite investment. How about you?
I agree. I bought my first student rental when I went to University of Guelph in second year of university. It's been a very long time since I have had them, but I got to experience them being as a student as well as an owner, and they have been phenomenal. They are one of the very few properties right now which do cash flow even in this high interest rate marketplace, as well as they're a great return on investment as long as you time them properly.
Absolutely. And before we get into the tips of owning a student rental property, the do's and the don'ts, approximately how much are we getting per room for students in today's market?
About 1,000 to 1,200 for a good property. But generally, the going rent is at the moment. Now, obviously, if you have an ensuite, you're getting closer to 1,200. If the washroom is shared, it's more closer to 1,000. But location, the size of the room, access to bus, all of those things make a big difference.
So that's amazing. That's a lot of money. So if you have 6 bedrooms, then you can get $6,000 or more for it.
Partially, possibly, right? Depends on the property, obviously, right?
Absolutely. All right. So tell me what your top tips are for people that are interested in buying a student rental property in the city of Guelph.
My number one tip is engage with the parents. Obviously, students are critical to it, but anytime we get the student rented out, we always want to engage the parents, get them on the lease agreement so they are on the hook, as well as keep them in conversation of what the students are doing in the property. What I have seen over the years that's incredibly helpful, because those are the people, those are your actual tenants, even though their kids are staying in the property.
And so with the parents, what's the main reason for having them on the lease? Is it security of the rent, or what's the connection there?
The main reason what I have found over the years is if I have any kind of a challenge with that student, it's much, much easier to get their parents to discipline them versus me trying to discipline a student, right? Especially at that age, they don't want to listen to you, right? But they will listen to their parents because they are the one who are in most cases paying the bills.
So here's the thing. I'm going to address this right at the beginning. I don't know if you were going to talk about this later on or not, but one of the things that I hear a lot are you shouldn't buy a student rental property because students are horrible tenants. My experience is not that at all. My client's experience is not that at all either. What is your experience? What would you have to say to parents or investors considering buying a student property?
Here is the good part about student rentals. One, generally they leave in 2 to 3 years. So you are able to increase the rent, right? Versus if you own a property long term, you are stuck with that rent and you are only allowed to increase 2.5%. Second, really good thing about student rentals is a lot of them are there for weekdays, and for weekends, they're not there. They go back to their parents' home and so on. So it does give you extra flexibility in your property. And my experience always has been with students is, yes, they are different than normal family as a tenant, but they are easier to manage overall. As long as you have a good property, you are giving them a good good house to live in, you don't generally have problems. We do see some problems, but generally you do see them where a landlord is trying to fit 8 to 10 students in a home, right? It becomes an issue. You should take a look into what kind of property you have and rent out accordingly.
Excellent. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I found that the selection process of the students is the biggest key. And maybe that's something you're going to be talking about. Maybe we can talk about that now, actually, is what is your advice on the selection process of students?
So what I have done over the years is I do make it a little bit difficult for students to rent out the property. There is certain rules and regulations with the lease agreement, with checklist, this. And we use that for a purpose. That's a filtration process in most cases. If the students are willing to follow these rules and go through this process to get into the home, more than likely, if we give them house rules and house list, they are going to follow it. And that has been my experience, is make the process a little bit more complicated and fun for them. And if they're not willing to do it, you do know this is not the right set of students for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We do the same thing. We usually have a Saturday where we have an open house style. So it helps us manage the appointments. So they all come between, say, 2 and 4 o'clock. We give them specific set of instructions that if you like the property, then here's the set of instructions to follow. And we make sure that they all get the same set of instructions. And what we find is that the people that follow the instructions float to the top of the list. Some people will kind of maybe do an application, but they'll miss steps 1, 2, and 3, or they won't do this, or they won't do that, or, the quality of if it isn't that good. And it really helps us weed it out. But the biggest thing that we're looking for is communication. How are they communicating with us? Because if they're not communicating with us during this process, then they're certainly not going to communicate with us very effectively when they're. And then you mentioned fun. We have fun. We have to have fun as realtors too. I mean, we can't just be dry all the time. And so last year we had a landlord that wanted to have us find tenants. So what we did is we set up in the upstairs bathroom a series of things that were wrong. We made some things wrong, like we put the shower curtain on the outside of the bathtub, or had some things that shouldn't be there. And we put a sign on the mirror in the bathroom saying, there are 3 things wrong with this bathroom. Please let us know in your application what they are, right? And so we had fun with this, and students would really show their character of who they are. So some of them would not do it. So naturally they're out. Some would do it and get 3, and they would maybe be right, or really didn't matter if they were all right or not, because there's actually more than 3 that we did. And then we get some that bring a list of like 20 things. And we're like, no, you're not the one for us either, right? It was pretty fun, and it made it stand out among students as well. And we had that property rented, within 24 hours of that series of showings.
That's amazing. I'm going to copy that.
You're welcome to, absolutely.
Thank you. Other thing which I have seen, especially with student rentals, is utilities. We actually, if the property's utilities are around $200 a month, on purpose we calculate they are going to be around $350 to $400, and we add them in rent and have it all inclusive. What I have seen over time is if you can give a fixed number to a student, it's much easier for them to calculate with their budgets and everything, versus something, hey, you have to add utilities on top, and just creates a mess. So we try to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah. So from a landlord perspective, what happens when the bills get high? Like what's the incentive for them to, not put the heat on in the middle of winter and open all the windows?
So what I have done in the past is I tell them, hey, this is how much money we are allocating towards utilities. And at the end of the year, if my utilities bills are less than that, I will credit you that. So they have an incentive to not use as much utilities as possible. And that I have seen in the head work like a charm. We give them a very set list of rules that, hey, do the laundry after 8 o'clock because the electricity is cheaper. Do it on the weekend. Try not to use hot water as much as possible during the first 2-3 hours when the rates are at the highest. And students are generally and what we have done is we have created more of a green theme that you want to use less to save the environment. That works out very well with students.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you make a great point about when to do laundry. because, we've come across some tenants, not necessarily student tenants, whether they're coming in from a different country or a different province even, and they don't know about how our electricity saving system works. We had one tenant who had a $600 a month electric bill. And we're like, what's going on? What the heck's going on? I know they like to bake and they like to give things away and they're very friendly that way, but baking does not take that much electricity. And what we found is that they are baking all day long during the highest peak hours. So just by switching over to baking after a certain time of day, it changed their entire electricity bill and saved them probably $300 to $400 a month.
That's insane. Wow.
Yeah. And they just didn't know. So I like your checklist. You mentioned that as well. And I'm sure that's something that comes up with your orientation, I think you called it.
Yeah. And that's the next point. Before we sign a lease with students, we like to do almost an hour-long orientation where we go over house rules, regulations. With most of our student rentals, we have a bi-weekly cleaning setup for them. Outside of it, student life is busy, especially in town of Guelph. Quite busy, and generally what I have seen is if we schedule a bi-weekly cleaning, it helps them out that they are responsible for cleaning their own bedroom, but the rest of the house gets cleaned bi-weekly, so they're not blaming each other, they're not fighting with each other. And it also gives me a great time to go and do a quick inspection of the property too. So I use that opportunity at least once a month to go in and do an inspection of the property to make sure everybody's behaving, and if there is someone causing a trouble, then we need to weed it out.
Yeah, checklists are very good, and orientations are very good. And honestly, I have never done them to the level that you're talking about, and I'm going to steal that one from you. And which is the point of these type of podcasts, is to make sure that everyone gets the tips that the experts are doing so that we can all have a successful business. But one that I think that a landlord should do is just simple things like posting the garbage schedule. That's one that I think it's overlooked so much. And it's really interesting because the city of Guelph actually has a little app that you can have that reminds you of when your garbage day is. And for those of you who aren't from Guelph, we have a system where it's blue garbage one day, which is your recyclables, and then gray garbage the next week, which is all your regular trash. And then every week, doesn't matter which week it is, you have your green, which is all your wet stuff. And a lot of students don't know this. So what happens is it gets piled up and then they miss their garbage day, and then it just gets worse after that. So if you can keep them on schedule right from the beginning, then you're going to win that battle of garbage.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we have done that. City of Guelph, you have the ability to go into the town hall and pick up the garbage chart, and we generally place it on the fridge, just to make sure that we are aware of it, and with the day when it's going out of work, and it's really, really helpful. But app I had no idea about, so I'm going to steal that from you and see if we can get the kids to take care of that.
Absolutely. What do you got next, Farhan?
The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is location, right? If you are someone who is looking to buy a student rental, the most critical investment you can make is in location. And again, I know you're going to go over more in detail about it, but the bus route is absolutely critical. Amenities are absolutely critical. Most of the students don't have a car, so you have to think of it from that point of view. A lot of time, the properties which do not work out very well for families work out great for student rentals. It means you can pick them up on a bit of a discount when you're buying them. And if you can, over the years, convert into a proper student rental, you could sell it at much higher premium later on.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. When I first started real estate 19 years ago, it was very popular to buy a property right beside the university and just walk there. But over the years, that has changed because a lot of people don't know this, that the students get a free bus pass, right? So a student these days would rather walk 100 meters to a bus stop rather than walk, 15 minutes through the snow to get to class. So they're dry and warm and they can do whatever they want, their social media, their homework, or whatever they want while they're on the bus. And so I caught on to this many, many years ago. And back when Gosling Gardens was just being built, nobody wanted to buy there. It was the worst investment ever, according to people. But I saw that, hey, it's going to be on a bus route. And guess what? They're going to be the first on the bus when they get on the bus on Gordon Street. And they're going to be waving to all these people that are further down the street as they go to university because the bus will be full. And to this day, that still happens. You see hundreds of people lining up at the bus stops and the bus just drives by because it's full.
You're right. In fact, that's why when I bought my first investment property in 2010, I bought it on Clearfields because I used to live on Gordon and Courtright, which is much closer to university. But I had to take the bus going the other way towards south end of Guelph, so I could get on it earlier, and then it would take a whole loop and come back toward university. So I remember very clearly when I bought my first investment, it was on Clearfields for that particular purpose, because the bus would get full in the morning.
Yeah, and nowadays that whole area is built up. You have lots and lots of shopping and gyms and libraries. Anything you want is right there. So to me, that's still the prime area for student rentals. There are a lot of people that will disagree with me, of course, but I find that that is the best of the best. You have when you have happy students, they pay their rent and they want to stay for, their 3 or 4 years. You don't have to continually re-rent this thing. The only negative part to that is what you alluded to before, is that, you can't raise the rent more than 2.5% while they're there.
You're right. But again, most of the students, and I'm sure you experience the same thing, they stay there for 2 to 3 years, and then the group is moving out and then the new group is coming in, right? And you have the ability to reevaluate the property. Like with me, there is few properties where we put in the legal basement apartments when the students left, or we did a backyard home in one of the properties because the students were leaving for the summer. So it allowed you to do that. The great thing about student rental is most of the time students are not there in summer. So if you communicate with them and say, hey, listen, I'm looking to upgrade this in the home, they're generally very open to those ideas because they benefit from it in September.
Yeah, absolutely. You actually made 2 points there. One is the fact that students leave for the summer gives you time to upgrade your house. When I call it regular rentals, you don't get that gap. The only time you get that gap is when it's empty and you're not making money. So for students, they typically leave for home from May to September. Sometimes they get 1 or 2 that stay, they get jobs locally and stuff like that. But oftentimes they'll still allow you to get into the house and do some maintenance. And so that's a big one. The second point that I thought you made that I'm now escaping as I'm talking, I'll get back. Maybe I'll edit this in somehow, but I forget what it is. But it was a good one. Trust me.
But yeah, overall, if you take a look into it, one final point I want to make is if you want to teach a discipline to your kid, I have done this for years after years. A lot of my older clients, if their kid is going to University of Guelph, I say, listen, buy a home, okay? Tell your kid that this home is going to be your home eventually, but I want you to treat it like your property from day one and teach them the discipline of renting it out to different students, collecting rent, paying off bills, paying off the mortgage. So you could take it as a learning experience for kids. And I have had multitude of parents who have done this, and their kids at the end of the day, a lot of them, they would agree on it that they learn more from renting out, because it's like a full business. You're giving your kids an opportunity to start a business right here when they are in university and learn how to collect your revenue, learn how to pay your bills, learn how to deal with a conflict. All of those things, it gives your kid an opportunity at that age to do. So you could create that kind of an opportunity for your kid if your kid is going to university.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a number of clients that have done that. Some of them have even put the student on title. I'm not sure what the benefits of that are not. I'm not an accountant, but they've done that. And many of them have kept it for 10, 15, longer years. And, I'm a bad agent in that way, as I encourage all of my clients to keep their properties for as long as possible. I'm not in the business of making money. No, just kidding. But I do think that keeping real estate is good, and that you can continue to expand your real estate portfolio. And if you start with the student, you're setting them up for life, because oftentimes you will make them part of ownership, and you'll at least teach them about life. So I really agree with your point there.
Yeah, and I had one where the lady bought property for her daughter. He stayed in it for 4 years. First year university, she bought her the property because that's what she wanted to do. And 4 years later, they sold the property. They made almost close to $300,000 profit. She gave 150,000 to her daughter to go out and buy her first condo in downtown Toronto because that's where she got a job. And she set her daughter up right then at 22. If you own a condo with $150,000 down payment, it's a big head start into your adulthood. While she made $150,000 profit on the side with the money which she invested. Now,
Absolutely.
obviously, that doesn't happen all the time, but it's not that uncommon. Generally, real estate does go up 8 to 10% every year. So if you're buying something for, let's say, $600,000, which is a regular student rental price in city of Guelph at the moment, there is a very high probability in 3 to 4 years it will be worth closer to 800,000, maybe 850,000. Your mortgage amount goes down, the equity goes up, so you have the ability to make money out of it. Instead of paying that $1,100 a month rent for your student, you could take advantage of building equity and money out of it.
Absolutely. Which would you buy? Would you buy a townhouse or would you buy a detached house?
To be honest with you, it doesn't make any difference. You need to consult experienced real estate agent. It all depends on your budget. My thing is buy something. Buying something is better than, so if you don't have the money to buy a detached, buy a townhouse. Even the one on 1055 Gordon or 1077 Gordon, 1055 and 1155 Gordon, or Wilson View or Scottsdale, those are great starting student rentals, and they're great locations to get into it if you wanna start something. But again, please consult an experienced real estate agent like Andrew who can walk you through what works and what doesn't work. The reality is with detached home, you're gonna make more profit, right? But if you don't have the fund to get into it, you're still gonna make money with townhouse. It might not be as much as that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for townhouses, you really have to talk about your lifestyle that you want to have, your ability to manage the property. I mean, you can always hire a property manager as well. But with a townhouse comes condo fees, which is an expense. But those condo fees cover the exterior maintenance in most cases in Guelph, the roof, the windows, the landscaping, the grass cutting, the snow removal. So you don't really have to lift a finger in that way, but it does come at a cost, which takes away from your profit. If you have a detached house, then all of those things are your costs. But if you buy the right property, those costs you won't incur them for a long period of time. And you can also budget little bits at a time as well. So it's not that bad, but you definitely have to maintain the property. And that's one of the biggest ones that I see with student rental properties is landlords are absent and they don't know that the grass is 3 feet tall. And you will get a bylaw infraction from the city. They're all over that. And you don't want that. You don't want to be in the city's bad books at all. So you want to make sure that stuff like that is taken care of. And I guess that would be a point, is to make sure that you have either a reliable student, whether that's your son or daughter or somebody in the place, or a property manager that is going to look after the property. For example, we have somebody that cuts grass and they know that we have a small footprint in terms of grass, and they do the neighborhood. And when they drive by and they see it needs a cut, they cut it. And so our bill is reduced because they don't have to cut it as much. But it's always presentable, so the city never gives us a call. And they'll do trimming and things like that. That's one of the things that I find is if you have a garage, as an example, that little crack that runs between the pavement and the concrete in the garage, that's where weeds grow. And landlords always forget about that, and a student will never pick up a dandelion. And, so the people that we hire, that's what they look after. They make sure that there are no weeds and things like that.
Absolutely right. And having either get your kid to do all that maintenance, or hire someone external. These are small costs, but the reward for them is so much bigger. Instead of you getting a $300 ByLaws ticket, which it had happened to me. I went away for a few months and came back, and before I knew it, I had 2 tickets on 2 of my properties. But once you get into city's bad books, they monitor that property religiously. So any mistake you make, they are after you. So you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah. And let's be straight with the audience here that the city of Guelph is all over all properties that are suspected student rentals. And that scares a lot of people. I get clients every year contact me and say, hey, I got a letter from the city that says I have a suspected lodging house, or there's this and that. All the letters are pretty much all the same. and it says there's a complaint in a lot of them, there really isn't a complaint necessarily. That is just the city doing their due diligence, making sure that everything's safe. And as long as you're safe and you comply with the bylaws, you have no issues. But let's talk about the bylaws. What are they, right?
So basically, from what my understanding is that one dwelling cannot have more than 5 unrelated parties. As soon as you reach more than 5, the bylaw does not allow it. There are ways to get around to it, but then you need to go and get the license, the lodging license.
Yeah, so let's talk about a lodging house first. A lodging house is anything actually more than 4 unrelated people in a dwelling where each room is rented out for profit, is sort of the loose definition of that. With that, you have to have things like locks on all the doors and self-closers, and there's a bunch of other things, fire alarm systems, all kinds of stuff. But beyond that, can you tell me the biggest reason why you wouldn't want a lodging house from a mortgage perspective?
They're next to impossible to get mortgage financing on.
Exactly. Yeah, so I have people all the time, let's get a lodging house with 10 rooms. That's amazing. I can pay cash. I'm like, that's great that you can pay cash for it. But when you go to sell it, you're going to have a hell of a time because virtually nobody can finance that. When it comes to financing lodging houses, it is not a good thing because it's virtually impossible to finance for the regular person. So you're eliminating most of the buyers when it comes time to sell it. Right? So one of the ways that people are getting around that is they're purchasing detached homes with 5-6 bedrooms, which by definition does not meet the bylaws criteria. However, there was some court case years ago that set some precedents for this, that said, hey, it's our human right to live how we want, as long as in a safe way. And at the very bottom of the bylaw, they list out what are the requirements, and they determine, the definition of a lodging house versus a dwelling unit. And they were very precise that a dwelling unit is the number of bedrooms in the house. They cannot have a locking door. The students have to know each other prior to doing the lease. They have to be all on one lease. They have to be paying their utilities on their own. And the biggest one, which is the toughest to get around, is it cannot be retrofitted to have extra bedrooms. And this is the one, I feel like they've added this on over the years because I don't remember it always being there. Because the advice that I would give people is, hey, let's go buy a house that has 4 bedrooms. Let's turn this family room that nobody uses. Who needs 2 big rooms for students on the main floor? Let's turn the family room into another bedroom. There's 5, and let's do another bedroom somewhere else in the place. Let's get 6 out of this place, right? And I feel like the city doesn't necessarily want that. However, at the same time, I do think that with the housing crisis, they're a little bit more lenient, if that makes sense. They just really want it to be safe. The bottom line is, though, 6 bedrooms gets you more money. Beyond 6 bedrooms, I don't think that the bylaw necessarily says the number of bedrooms anymore. It used to say 5 to 6 at one point, and I think, again, it was changed. So I can't really give advice on the number of bedrooms, but what I can do is give you advice in that when students are looking for a place to live, they're not looking for 7 bedrooms. Even 6 is pretty tough. They're looking for 4 and 5. Just think about it, getting a group together of that many people is hard. And then having that many people in a house is also hard to deal with. So 4 and 5 is the magic number. That's my advice. That's number 6 or 7 on our list for tips.
One way I have seen, Andrew, is if you were to create a legal basement apartment with 2 bedrooms, and you have 4 bedrooms upstairs, you're able to get around to it legally. Again, the students need to know each other prior. Lease has to be on one person's name. There has to be fire separation, which is required by City of Guelph, between upstairs and downstairs. And as long as they're completely independent unit, then you're okay. But again, it depends on house to house and your situation to your situation. Please consult an experienced real estate agent who can walk you through this. I'm saying this again and again because so many times it has happened that somebody has bought a 2-bedroom condo and they wanted to convert it into 3 rooms and this and that, and just not allowed. Especially with the condos, you have a lot more restrictions versus the detached or a semi-detached home.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was sort of the point that I was thinking about making earlier on that I forgot, is when you buy a detached house, you have more flexibility, right? And first of all, in terms of making additions to the property. So you can add a basement apartment, you can do an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit, like the one you did. So it gives you flexibility, the ability to create more income, but it also is good for long term. So as time goes on, things change in our environment. And, for example, maybe people don't want to be near the university anymore, or maybe there is something built near a student rental kind of pocket that, they don't really want to purchase there for student rentals anymore. Maybe families want to move there. So you're also insulating yourself a little bit by buying a detached home because it's more flexible to maneuver if you need to in the future because of changing demographics. I don't know if that made sense. It kind of rambled there a little bit, but that's an additional thought that I thought I would bring to the table here is buying a detached home gives you the flexibility for the future.
You're absolutely right. It does. It definitely does. And it gives you more opportunity to change the use of the property. You could convert it to a single family home afterwards, need it to be. If, like during COVID, for example, a lot of student rentals got converted into family houses very quickly because students were not there and the owners had to convert them into regular homes and sell them. And right after, as soon as the COVID was over, students came rushing back into it, and we saw a lot of single-family homes getting converted into student housing.
Absolutely. That's a great case in point for sure. And then the other thing is condo fees, they don't go down. Condo fees always go up. So if you're buying an apartment, and I have this a lot of times, and it seems to be GTA buyers, they want to buy apartments in Guelph, 2 bedrooms for their son or daughter and a friend. And, that they can buy what they want. But at the end of the day, that to me is not the best investment because, in 5 or 6 years from now, when they go to sell it, the condo fees will be higher and they're building a lot of these things. So when you look at supply and demand, the demand just isn't going to be there, where detached homes, they're not building as many. So there's going to be more demand in the future, right? That's just my two cents there. I think a detached home is a better investment than an apartment building.
I agree with you 100%. If you have means to do it, definitely I'll go for detached. If not, even like townhouses, they have very limited restrictions. Condos, I find, is much, much more restricted.
It's all in the number of bedrooms, because you can get a townhouse right now in Guelph for, we'll say 700,000 that has 4 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms upstairs, and oftentimes the basement will be finished and used as a bedroom, as opposed to a 2-bedroom condo, which is going to cost, we'll say 450, 500 now, maybe, with maybe oftentimes higher condo fees and less income.
You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. All depends on if you can come up with a little bit extra down payment going for townhouses, or ideal case would be to go for a detached, but definitely not.
Absolutely. Do you got anything more for us? I know we're getting short on time here.
My final point, whenever you're looking into something like this, is please do some homework and spend some time in city of Guelph. A lot of times I have seen parents, they make 1 or 2 trips down to Guelph and buy something, and immediately as soon as their kids move into the property, they have this huge regret. If you are serious about buying a student rental, spend some time in city of Guelph, learn a little bit about it. Hire an experienced realtor who is not going to sell you just quickly a home and you just want to get you off the list. Look at someone who is willing to teach and educate, right? And someone who has experience, someone who does not own a single property and who is trying to sell you a student rental. Stay away from that.
Absolutely. And I would go a little bit further as well and use local. And I think this is kind of obvious from all types of property, but especially student rentals. And I see it all the time, and I'm not trying to knock on our industry at all, but I see a lot of times people coming from the GTA in particular, they want to use their GTA agent, and the agent doesn't know what is a student rental area, what is not, what are the bylaws, what are the bus routes, all the little nuances that are very key to making a solid investment. So your realtor in Toronto can still get paid on the deal by referring it to a local agent. I think there's 500 or 600 of us locally here that will do a really good job. So that's my advice to you, is to look up a local agent and work with them, spend some time with them, go to different areas of the city, meet at a cafe and kind of soak up the social life, get a feel for the area, get the inside scoop. And again, that's for all areas of real estate, but in particular, student rentals, very important.
You're absolutely right. I think that is the most critical aspect of it. I think that's all I got. Andrew, if there is any final remarks you want to add in?
No, Farhan, thank you for your time. I really appreciate your expertise in the mortgage field and also as a student rental owner yourself. If anybody has any questions about what we talked about or has any comments, feel free to email us or write in the comments what your question is, and we'll get back to you. I'll put in the link somewhere, Farhan's information, so you can get a hold of him for anything related to mortgages as well. Well, thank you for spending your time with us learning about student rental properties in the city of Guelph. If you're thinking about buying a student rental property, feel free to reach out to myself or Farhan. Our information will be in the description at the bottom of this YouTube channel. Thanks again, and we look forward to talking to you more about what's going on in real estate in the city of Guelph.